الرجيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله اللهم ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Tonight, well, I would say usually we are gathered, but our discussion tonight surrounds this great occasion which we celebrate on this night, the 15th night of Shahr Ramadan al-Mubarak, the birth of the second holy Imam, Al-Imam Al-Hasan Al-Mushtaba salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, who was the first son of Imam Ali alayhi salam and Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, and the first grandchild of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, whom Rasulullah referred to as his child. And now generally with the first child in the family, we look at them as the first light in the family. That they're the ones that pretty much bring happiness into their household. And it's a blessing from God that we appreciate. Be it that this child is a boy or a girl, regardless, it's a blessing in its own way. And if to want me to be more specific, the boy is actually the blessing and the girl is a mercy, according to the narrations. Now, with the first child and the build up to the first child is usually happy. And the people, it's a happy occasion where the people are all, the ones involved, are excited about it. Unfortunately, these days, and I get these questions often from people when it comes to their pregnancies, and these questions that are brought up with regard to when they have an ultrasound, they pretty much scare you and they petrify you. A woman's always told, oh well, you're low in iron, you're vitamin D deficient, and they'll start making measurements, this isn't right. And then the mother that's carrying the child is thinking to herself, oh my God, what is this burden I've brought into life, when it's supposed to be a happy thing. But obviously the doctors generally give you the extent of or the midwife or whoever's doing the ultrasound, the extent of the situation and what dangers could be ahead. And sometimes people tend to panic, but they should be positive, because having that first child, or any child for that matter, is a blessing that is given to us. But the first child is so important because this is the model that all your other children will be following. See, it doesn't matter how you raise this child, because usually with the first child, you don't know what parenting is all about. It's something new. You take this child home, you need to look after the child. In fact, when you have that first child and you're leaving the hospital, you think to yourself, oh my God, let me take the child home. You don't realize that it's yours, it's mine, that someone that I'm going to raise. But technically, a child isn't yours in the sense of ownership. It's yours in the sense that you're going to be the one that nurtures and sustains and nourishes the child in that sense. And in that way, you educate them in this manner. But this first child is the model that all your other children will follow. That when your children see this child, they look up to their older child. And whatever you allow them to do, the rest will follow suit. So it's a very important moment in your life. And if you take a look at Imam Hasan alayhi salam, a lot of people neglect his position and his station. A lot of people observe things when it comes to this Imam. He was oppressed by not only the Shia, the followers, sorry, not only by the general Muslims, the Sunnis, but also by the Shia, the special, the ones that have a closer link to him, have oppressed him and not given him his right as they should. A lot of people question his treaty with Muawiyah, which isn't our discussion tonight, but they question the position. And if I don't appreciate what his position was and his status was, I cannot appreciate what his teachings were. It's like when you go to the Hajj and you're performing tawaf around the Kaaba, and you're performing and not knowing what the value of the Kaaba is, not understanding the one that was born in the Kaaba, who he was, not appreciating what it is that you're dealing with. You don't give it that reverence, you don't give it the same sanctity. For you, you're just doing exercises. You don't know what the purpose, like your prayers, if you don't understand what you're saying, you don't understand what you're doing, it doesn't have that same flavor. You don't understand the purpose of your standing before God. Why am I praying? Sometimes people might question an action in religion. They want to know why they're doing something in order for them to have ma'rifah, an understanding. This is a good thing. So when I question to understand something, it is in order for me to have better clarification, because then the application can be correct. Sometimes when you purchase something, let's take a look, for example, when we're using Microsoft Word legally and we've paid for it. So when we're using Microsoft Word, you'll use it in a certain manner, and your child that goes to school and actually gets educated how to use it, they use it in a different manner. They've got all these little things. They even know the paragraphing and all that, how it's done properly. And for you, you just know Control S means save, and that's it. And that for you is you're an accomplished Microsoft user. They have a different understanding, and when I have different understanding, I have a different form of application. So we'll take a look firstly at how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Prophet Muhammad, used to treat Imam Hasan alayhi salam. In a hadith, it says that the Messenger of Allah كان النبي حاملا للحسين بن علي على عاتقه فقال رجل نعم المركب ركبت يا غلام. So he says that the Prophet was walking and he had the Imam on his shoulders, sitting on his shoulders. So a man said to the Prophet that, when you say Na'am, how blessed is that ride that you are on, what you are sitting on. How blessed, O child, the ride that the Prophet, you are sitting on the shoulders of the Prophet. How fortunate are you? So then the Messenger of Allah replied by saying, وَنَعْمَ الرَّاكِبُ هُوَ. And also how blessed is the one, or how fortunate is not only the one riding, even the rider. How blessed is the one riding. So in other words, not only am I someone of status, even Al-Hasan is someone of status. You know what I mean? Something that he's bringing him at the stage where he's an infant. He's a young child, but he's letting people know of his status. Now, this is where the question of nepotism comes in. People may come in and say, hold on, this is the Prophet showing favor to his grandson. And this was one of the challenges as to why the Imams didn't get their position. Because people said, how are they receiving the position? What is it, hand me down from father to son? And people were averse to this. And they were people that would challenge this station and say, we cannot accept this. So is it in the case that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was doing, like we have a saying in Arabic, we say, ma hada bi'ul an zaytitu aqar, which means that no one says that their oil has sediments. Everyone says, my oil's pure. It's pure olive oil. So when it comes to what's mine, it's always the best. You've seen even with parents, when their child is a criminal, they'll always say, oh, he was set up, the police did this to him, and they'll always say the best about them, regardless of what the child is. Even the child could be a mafia godfather, the parent would say he was a good child. So some people came with the attitude, is this the case with Imam Hasan alayhi salam, that Rasulullah was giving favor to him because he's related to him? Because in another incident where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam is prostrating, he's in his prayers, and he remains for a long time in his prostration. So they asked Rasulullah after the prayer, why did you prolong your prostration? He says, because Al-Hasan was playing on my back and I did not want to rush him. I wanted him to remain in this position without rushing him, to allow him to be comfortable. So why would he do this? Is this the case because it's his grandchild, or is there another reason? Once again, you get the naysayers that say this is due to relation. But then you have to then look at the character of Imam Al-Hasan Al-Mushtaba sallallahu alayhi. Firstly, of his character is that the Imam gave his wealth in its entirety. He gave it away twice. So imagine at one point where I have all my wealth and I give everything. When I say amwale, we're not talking about only the financial, the liquid wealth that he had. We're talking about even his property. He gave it all in the way of God. He gave it to the poor. And he did this twice at 2 points in his life. And 3 times during his life, he split his wealth in half. That he gave half to Allah Azza wa Jalla and to the poor, and half he kept for himself. So in this point, it shows his generosity is limitless with this manner when you compare it to other people that when they have to give for charity, they'll take out a $5 note out of their pocket and they'll rub Queen Elizabeth's face because they're trying to make sure it's only one note and not two. It's too a bit like Ebenezer Scrooge, trying to give something out. I won't go Dickensian right now, but anyway, if we look at this point, okay, and the way that he gave, it shows that his character was different. But one story that really defines the second Holy Imam's character was the story of where a Shami, the man from Sham, comes to see the Imam. And this man is someone that has been sitting in the congregations of Muawiyah and hearing all the things Muawiyah has to say, all the slanderous things about the first Imam, Imam Ali alayhi salam, and the Imam Hasan. And it says that he came up and he started cursing Yal'an al-Imam al-Hasan. He was cursing Imam Hasan and Imam Ali. And so when he started cursing him, the Imam did not respond in any bad way. In fact, the Imam said, Assalamu alaik, and he smiled. He sent his salam and he smiled. And then the Imam said, Adhunnuka ghariba. I suspect that you are not from here. And you're not from the area, you're an out-of-towner with what you're saying to me. And then he says, وَلَعَلُّكَ, it's also perhaps that you might be mistaken with my identity as you're cursing me. But if that is the case, so the Imam's already given him an excuse for cursing him. He hasn't said, all right, let's take 10 paces and we're going to have a duel right now. Back in those days, that was, if you look at the word chivalry, that's pretty much what it was. It was where you didn't stand down to a duel and you would fight. The Imam didn't call him to a duel, nothing. He said that it seems like you're from out of town and you have mistaken me. And then he mentions to him, he says, فَلَوْ اسْتَعْتَبْتَنَا أَعْتَبْنَاكَ. So you're from out, and if you are here to reproach us, you find, when you reproach someone, when you question the way that they, you question the way that they have been to you in a way where you start saying, why didn't you do this, and why haven't you been good to me, and why, and when you start questioning the way they are to you, if you are questioning how we are to you, he said, then we will please you, we'll make up for it, in other words. So the Imams already not only told him that you might have mistaken identity, but if you're still upset, we can solve it. And then he says, وَلَوْ سَأَلْتَنَا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ, and if you ask for anything, we will give you. And then he says, وَلَوْ اسْتَرْشَدْتَنَا أَرْشَدْنَاكَ. In other words, if you want advice, we will give you advice. And advice for free, We'll give you free advice. After you've abused us, you've slandered me. In other words, I'm here to give you even advice. And then he says, وَلَوْ اسْتَحْمَلْتَنَا حَمَّلْنَاكَ. That even if you ask us to give you a ride, like in other words, give you a horse, we will give you a horse to ride. We will even assist you there. And then he says, وَإِن كُنْتَ عُرْيَانًا كَسَوْنَاكَ. That if you don't have clothing to wear, we will give you clothing to wear. وَإِن كُنْتَ مُحْتَاجًا أَغْنَيْنَاكَ. That if you are needy, we will make you needless. And then he says, وَإِن كُنْتَ طَرِيدًا آوَيْنَاكَ. That if you're a fugitive, you're running away, you're a captive, that someone has taken you as a prisoner, he said, we will give you refuge. We will protect you, we'll hide you. وَإِن كَانَ لَكَ حَاجَةٌ قَضَيْنَاهَ لَكَ. If you have any need whatsoever, we will fulfill this need. Then he said, if you move your journey or the direction that you're moving towards and bring it towards us and let us take you in as our guest. So see, this is the response the Imam gives after this man has cursed him all this time. So then the Imam says, I did not hate anyone on this earth more than you and your father. But after I met you, I swear that you are God's representative on the earth. And he asked for forgiveness, and he asked to follow the Imam and be his guest for those days. So if you see the mannerisms in which the Imam treats this man, brings the man towards understanding and seeing right from wrong. So the character that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam was expressing was very important. See, why is it important to know that he had this kind of a character? Because generally people don't have this character. I mean, if you cut someone off on the street, they want your blood. Generally, people don't accept this. Someone says a tweet about someone, they want to take them for all that they got. Anything so simple. This man was cursing and slandering the Imam. The Imam is someone, a man of God, a divine individual in the sense that he's sent and representing the Almighty God. And when he responds in a cool and measured response that doesn't agitate even any more spite or hatred, or doesn't exacerbate the situation more. It calms down the situation, and it brings to light. Now the Imam, in a lot of these hadiths that you'll find, many a times the people didn't turn around and say to the Imam that you're on the right. They would use this case with anybody. They would, in the end of the day, you using a good character and you being a good person is not for the other person to come and follow your faith. It's so you can be a better person. It's all about you making yourself a better character. It's not about me worrying if I'm nice to this person, he will become a Muslim. No. It's about you being good for you. Even if they're not going to turn. It's not like, all right, I'm going to be nice, but if he doesn't, then I'll pull out my weapon and go to my contingency plan B. This person's not going to turn to God, so now I'll compel him. No, it's for you to be a good person, whether this person agrees with what you do or you doesn't, each to their own, and you do what is required of you. So, this is the biggest problem when it comes to Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam, is people don't know them. Because we're not that vocal about teaching the people about the Imams and their status and their position. If you even take a look at the stories about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, most of them are narrated by those that were enemies to the Prophet. Those that claim to be followers and were enemies. If you take a look at the stories that are portrayed, and that's why we found books that were written like by Salman Rushdie, the Satanic Verses, or you found where the Dutch filmmaker or they all want to make movies about the Prophet. They make these movies based on these spiteful narrations and and accounts that are given to by those that were not the representatives of the Prophet, but those that usurped these positions and narrated such narrations. And this is why it's important for us to teach people about the lives of these holy Imams. So the Imam Al-Hasan Al-Mushtaba salawatullahi wa salamu alayh was the second holy Imam and the first grandson of Rasulullah, and he was someone that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam showed favor to. Now when we look at when we're talking about favor, we said this isn't based on the fact that the Imam was related to him. If you recall in the Quran, and when we mentioned, for those that listen to our discussion on Sayyidah Khadija, we talked about relation isn't an issue, because Abu Lahab was the uncle of Rasulullah, his paternal uncle, his father's brother. And God in the Quran said, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab, that he's cursed by Allah in the Quran, and he's the paternal uncle of the Prophet. And even the wives of the Prophet, Lastunna ka ahadin min an-nisa, we mentioned, and ittaqaytun, that even the wives of the Prophet are not like any other woman if they are righteous. So the condition was that they have to be righteous, they have to be God-fearing. If they're not God-fearing, then they don't have any special treatment. So you would have special treatment being related to the Prophet if you're good. If you're not good, there's no special treatment. There wouldn't be any special treatment in this case. But in the case of the Imam was in the position that Allah had appointed him. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Allahumma inni uhibbuhu fa ahibbahu wa ahibbu man ahabbahu. He says, oh Allah, I love Al-Hasan, Rasulullah said. So love him and love whoever loves him. This is a supplication of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. As we know, this supplication is accepted. So firstly, we know of his position. Now let's take a look at one of the teachings of the Imam. That's what I want to talk about. And this is obviously of the commandments of the Imam to Junada, one of the companions of the Imam, where he says to Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salam, Adhni yabna Rasulullah. Adhni means what? Adhni means exhort me. When I say exhort, it's like when you advise someone, or give me something to go by, something to follow. Command me. Give me an exhortation, which we say a maw'adha. Sometimes people need a reminder or something of that nature. So he said, tell me something that will benefit me. So a lot of the times people don't want to learn anything. They don't want to hear it. They'll take it. I don't know if you remember where they asked the manager of Liverpool Football Club about the coronavirus, and he went off. He said, why are you asking me? If you want to ask me about football. I'm not, and this is something that people are guilty of. They ask celebrities, or they ask celebrities about things that they have nothing to do with. As if a celebrity suddenly becomes someone that understands pandemics or understands situations that people may be in. And this is what happens. Sometimes people go into a doctor's surgery, and they'll ask him about stocks even. They'll ask him about anything because he's a doctor. So it means it's a doctor, even though he's a medical doctor, but then he must be a doctor in every field. And likewise, when people come and ask a sheikh, they'll ask him about anything, not realizing that the sheikh's expertise is, and he tries to make his expertise religion, which is very difficult to begin with, let alone asking him about other things, but people do. Now, when you ask people to exhort you, you need to ask the right people. So this person, Junada, needed a good exhortation, and he got this exhortation from the second holy Imam. He goes, A'adni ibn Rasulullah. Now, when he asked for this maw'adha, he wants something that can benefit him. This is the whole idea, something that can benefit you, for you to reflect over. Something for us in these nights. We're halfway through Shahr Ramadan, and I think this is a very effective maw'adha. So he says to him, استعد لسفرك. Prepare for your journey. Imam Hasan says to him, وحصل زادك قبل حلول أجلك. He says, prepare for your journey. And then he says, bring about your supplies. When we say your supplies, your provisions. He says basically before the ship leaves the dock, before the journey begins. Because once it starts, you can't go back. Could you imagine, when they tell everyone, especially we remember we experienced the bushfires recently in Australia, and they tell them to only take what's necessary. Get yourself ready to get out. You grab it and go, because you can't go back. That house is going to burn. It's done. So once you've left, you cannot return. So he tells him, listen, استعد لسفرك. Prepare for your journey. He says, وحصل زادك. And then he says, get your provisions ready before it's time for you to depart. And then he says, to add to this, he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ تَطْلُبُ الدُّنْيَا وَالْمَوْتُ يَطْلُبُكَ. He said, and know that you seek this world while death seeks you. See, if you see people, they're too preoccupied with the world that they live in and trying to get provisions for this life, even though this life is terminal, even though this life has an expiry date, and what's for certain, and there's no doubt therein, is death. Death seeks you. As I'm using a biblical term, where in the Bible it says, like a thief in the night. It comes without you even knowing. It doesn't seek permission, and death follows you. So in other words, to be prepared for what is inevitable. Death is inevitable, so I have to always be in a state where I'm preparing for it. Then he says in the hadith, وَلَا تَحْمِلْ هَمَّ يَوْمِكَ الَّذِي لَمْ يَأْتِ عَلَى يَوْمِكَ الَّذِي أَنْتَ فِيهِ. Allahu Akbar. If you think about this, do not be too preoccupied or too worried or too concerned with the day that is yet to come as opposed to the day that you are in. So worry about the situation you are in. A lot of people, they're thinking, years ahead, what's going to happen? What's going to happen later? How will my children fare? The future looks dim. If you're going to sit and think like that, you're not going to advance. Worry about the state of your affairs and what your problem is now. Now, live the present. What am I going to do right now? This is what's important, because I may not see the end of today. Then he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ لَا تَكْسِبُ مِنَ الْمَالِ شَيْئًا فَوْقَ قُوتِكَ إِلَّا كُنْتَ فِيهِ خَازِنًا لِغَيْرِكَ. So these people that live their life accumulating wealth, hoarding wealth, the Imam said, all the wealth that you accumulate, all the wealth that you gain, know that you will not acquire any or use any of it except what you require on your daily needs. Anything else that you accumulate, all you are doing is storing it for someone else. So in other words, you're just a storage system for the next people after you. So anytime I'm sitting there hoarding wealth, I'm hiding wealth, what am I doing? I'm just a storage facility for those after me. And trust me, if you actually think that when you die, your wife and your kids, or your husband and your kids, or whoever dies first, generally the men die first, no offense, I'm probably going to get killed after for this, but whoever dies, there's no one left behind crying over you. Everyone's they're going to cry obviously because they miss you. They're going to miss you. But then they move on. And then they look at all the money that you've stored for them and all the wealth that you've left for them. That's all they're worried about. What's left there? So if I'm sitting there killing myself just to make that extra dollar and just to get that further in the life, you're not going to go anywhere. All you're doing is storing. And if it's a good substantial amount of money, there's a good chance your offspring aren't going to talk to each other because they're going to be fighting over the way it's divided. I'm not saying that we're not encouraging prosperity. It's not, it's not an anti-capitalistic discussion here. But I'm just saying that don't kill yourself in order for you to acquire more than you actually need. See, our relationship with this world should be pretty much like the relationship of a small bird in a cage. The small bird in the cage. The necessities that I need. It's not until you actually leave the cage where you're going to be free. And you're going to actually see everything is going to be available to you. Because you're already under the restraints in this earth. The most difficult thing of living here and living comfortably is to know that I expire. That's what makes it so difficult. Something I always think about. That one day I'm going to finish. I'm not going to be here. So I need to do what's required here in order to have the best in the hereafter. You're not going to miss out on anything. This is the thing people fail to understand. When the Imam says this, you're not going to miss out on this in anything. You're going to eat just like everybody else gets to eat. You get to drink like everybody else gets to drink. You eat what's permissible. Some of them eat what's permissible, what's not permissible. You drink what's permissible. They may drink what's not permissible or permissible. You get to marry, they get to marry. You get to have a relationship, they get to have a relationship. You move on in life and you're all terminal. Don't think in any way that you're going to miss out. But the Imam says always be aware of the hereafter and what you are here for. What the purpose of this life is. And this holy month, this is what I need to look at. What do I want? How do I want this month to finish for me? Do I start my life as a better person? Because you got your chances now. The people I owe money to, let me pay this money back. The people that I've oppressed, let me seek forgiveness from them. Sometimes you may be living a life you don't realize. Someone asked me a question recently. He said that I work for a company, and I'm going to change the discussion so people don't know what I'm talking about. He says, for example, I work for a building supplies company, and sometimes there's leftover cement from the jobs that I do. He said, I use this cement to do jobs on the side. Is that permissible? And I said, of course it isn't. This isn't your property. You have to seek permission from the company you've been using. And he said, well, we've never discussed it. It's honest. He's an honest man. He's a good man. And that was the reason why he asked this. Other people will probably over order so they can get more supplies. So now's the time for me to wake up. Have I taken something that's not rightfully mine? And I need to make amends with this. All the prayers that I own, I need to make up for them. I need to think after Shahr Ramadan, the fasting I owe, that I need to make up for. The people that especially in this month, there are people that I don't talk to anymore over stupid issues, small issues that have no meaning. And when I say small issues, the only issues that should have big meaning where you don't make up with someone is if this person means you harm. Like the only types of people, imagine you're related to a sexual predator, I'll tell you not to make up with them. But if you have an issue with someone and the issue is over some business you were in that didn't work, but you were good friends all the time, don't forget, not everyone's trying to steal from you. The issue that you may have with them might be based on perspective, because each person, when they bring their case forward, thinks that they're in the right. You might need someone to mediate between you. Find someone that you find righteous to mediate in order for you to fix up this relationship. I know that the world is short. Your time here is very short to make amends and to prepare yourself for the hereafter. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal on this night, the night of the birth of the Imam, as the dua says, that we read, A'udhu bi jalali wajhika al-kareem, that we seek refuge in the generosity of Allah Azza wa Jal. An yanqadiya anni shahru Ramadan. That this month passes me by, or even yatlu al-fajr min laylati hadhi, even from this night, I seek refuge in you that this night does not even pass over. وَلَكَ قِبَلِ تَبِعَةٌ أَوْ ذَنْبٌ تُعَذِّبُنِي عَلَيْهِ. That I don't even want to have a single sin or misdemeanor, any small issue that I may be punished over. So in other words, I pray Allah Azza wa Jal on this night, on the birth of Imam Hasan, that not anyone has even a speck of sin or left on them. So we seek forgiveness on this night, and we seek to make amends with those that we mentioned in the points before, and we seek to leave this world, if this is our last night, to leave purified. May Allah prolong your lives in His service. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.